The archetype of the warrior inspires youth in every culture. These brave ones put their lives on the line to defend nation, family, and soil from invasion and desecration. Sequenced into our DNA is the urge to protect and defend not just ourselves, but the ones that we love. Yet the reality of war is quite different than the brawny music soldiers sing to bolster their courage, like those opening words. Robert E. Lee wrote these words to his wife in 1864. "What a cruel thing is war, to separate and destroy families and friends and mar the purest joys and happiness God has granted us in this world, to fill our hearts with hatred instead of love for our neighbors, and to devastate the fair face of this beautiful world," said President Eisenhower in a 1953 speech. "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, and the hopes of its children. This is not a way of life at all in any true sense. Under the clouds of war, it is humanity hanging on a cross of iron." Soldiers today are returning home more often in tatters than in glory. They return not only with visible wounds, but also with invisible ones. We are discovering, for example, how damaging exposure to explosive shock waves are to brain tissue. Those shock waves travel right through the skull, knocking the brain back like a punch to the jaw. A flak jacket and helmet might stop shrapnel, but shock waves go right through, doing unseen damage called traumatic brain injury, or TBI. What we hear most about, however, is post-traumatic stress symptoms that disrupt veterans' lives. Those symptoms are factors in breaking up their relationships and marriages, stimulating substance abuse to self-medicate, the inability to hold a job, homelessness, and suicide. Inability to sleep, restless weariness, hypersensitivity and reactivity, emotional numbness, inability to concentrate, and fits of rage are just a few of the cognitive disruptions vets experience. The Washington Post reports that more than half of the 2.6 million who have served in Iraq and Afghanistan have returned home with at least one of these problems. While it has newer names like PTSD and TBI today, veterans returning from war with mental problems is nothing new. This damage has been known in the past by names like war neurosis, mid-20th century, battle fatigue during World War II, shell shock in World War I, soldier's heart, DaCosta's syndrome, irritable heart, the effort syndrome from the American Civil War to World War I. The Swiss have used the term nostalgia, German, Heimweh, French, maladie du pays, estar roto, to be broken in Spanish in the 1600s. The chronicle of damage goes back to the ancient Greeks. Dr. Ed Tick, the source for my list and the reading, points out the Iliad can be read as a textbook on traumatic war wounding. We can clearly see the effects of trauma in the description of Achilles' behavior. Modern warfare has components that compound the trauma. Dr. Lori Lech and Elaine Miller-Caras, co-founders and co-directors of the Trauma Resource Institute, explain, and I quote, "What makes it even harder for those with war-related trauma and other emotional disorders to get the help they need is that therapists often don't understand the unique, confounding, and anomalous situation of a war zone. As in no other potentially traumatizing situation, troops are predator and prey and witness, sometimes all three at once. For example, Joan, who was sent into Afghan villages to ferret out the Taliban, had the job of searching Muslim women suspected of carrying explosives. Armed and ready to engage with the Taliban, she was in the predator role, but she was simultaneously frightened prey, because if one of the explosives she was looking for actually detonated, she'd die instantly or be horribly wounded. She might also be shot from behind by a sniper. While she herself never experienced explosions, discovered explosives, she did tragically become a direct witness to a traumatizing event, seeing one of her closest buddies blown up. In combat zones, however, these three roles often are experienced simultaneously with the corresponding physiological arousal. As prey, the biological impulse may be to flee. As predator, to fight, often with great ferocity and rage, especially if a buddy has been killed. And as witness, to freeze while terrible events unfold before one's eyes. Since the battlefields in Iraq and Afghanistan have neither boundaries nor any predictable let-up to the violence, a soldier can be experiencing these states serially or simultaneously much of the time. Add multiple deployments with little chance to decompress in between those deployments, and we can begin to appreciate the difficulties so many troops experience when they attempt to reintegrate back home. And when they come home, they are not the same person they were when they left. Just about every soldier uses violence in one way or another that they find disturbing or later regret. No soldier goes onto the battlefield to kill innocent women and children, surrendering soldiers or torture, poison, or starve people, to destroy civilian homes and property, and to participate in the death of their comrades in arms. Yet this is the inescapable reality of war. Kill or be killed, destroy or be destroyed, and soldiers bring all this home in their heart as a moral injury, whether they return home with any physical injuries. So the fact that Vietnamese have very little experience or evidence of PTSD in their population might be a little surprising. Whether North or South Vietnamese, just about all of them were involved or affected by the war. Millions died. Just hold on to that for a moment. Millions died. Just about every family had someone who died or was injured during the 40-year conflict. U.S. bombing and use of defoliants like Agent Orange did enormous damage. Yet most Vietnamese had little lasting psychological damage. One reason is the nature of the conflict. They were defending their own homes and villages. This aligns much better with one's moral conscience than fighting in a foreign war for strategic advantage or to stop the threat of communism or today Islamic fundamentalism. Another reason I'd like to highlight for us is the magnitude of the conflict. Every Vietnamese person, young or old, was part of the conflict, and everyone understood the harsh condition and the horrific experiences civilians as well as the military experienced. Returning soldiers had ready sources of compassion from those who fully understood what that soldier had experienced. How different was the reception of the returning soldier from Iraq or Afghanistan? Less than 1% of Americans have had any experience of Iraq or Afghanistan, let alone combat. Their combat experiences were significantly different from previous world wars, where there was a front and had an objective to accomplish that had a finish line. These soldiers were not warriors defending their own land as much as occupiers of someone else's land. And their Western ways were not welcomed nor embraced by the populations they encountered. For the first time in American history during my lifetime, we have moved from a citizen army to a professional army. Much of our high-tech weaponry requires a professional fighting force to operate it, maintain it, and repair it. As these professional soldiers spent a career in service, they moved further away from the civilian population, becoming almost a separate, isolated, and insulated community. And a free society must guard against the divergence of their interests from that of the civilian population. We let that separation happen at our peril. Whether professional or civilian, our armed forces fight for us, the citizens of this nation. When they kill, ultimately they are killing to defend and protect us and our way of life. We have a responsibility to welcome them home and provide the care that they need to reintegrate into society rather than live out their lives on the margins before suffering an early death by disease, substance abuse, or suicide. We must learn to offer these vets respect for their soldier's heart. Just as we are forever changed when a loved one dies, particularly a child, so can a soldier's heart be permanently changed by the trauma of war. The soul is changed when we witness man's inhumanity to man, experience the terror of sudden death, or end another person's life by our own hand. Encountering life and death daily, not knowing whether we will see another sunset or another sunrise, exposes the harshness of existence and the cruelty of humanity in a way that is very hard to live with. Yet, that is the nobility, the great nobility of true warriors. They can look into the pit of hell, see the empty void, see the evil and the innocent victimization, and choose to live. The mature warrior knows this as one aspect of existence and cannot be removed from our DNA. And because it cannot be removed or eliminated, at least not yet, warriors will be needed to stop it in its tracks. And that action will require the warrior to rise above this element in him or herself. So how can we help in that process? Our federal government must fund the Veterans Administration to tend to the visible and invisible wounds of our returning vets and returned vets. We can support Unitarian Universalist military chaplains. When I was in Albany, I had as an intern a military chaplain. We can advocate for humane treatment for our servicemen and women, giving them adequate recovery time from between deployments. I have confidence that veterans can learn to carry their wounded hearts, their wounded soldiers' hearts, as true warriors. I hear that potential in the voice of Karl Roeder, inmate in Dachau from 1933 to 1945. He wrote, "In Dachau, I made a powerful discovery. No power exists in the world that is capable of destroying humans as spiritual beings." Let us hold that confidence, even in our uncertainty of the path to its realization, as we honor the sacrifice of our veterans on this Memorial Day weekend.